I watched my son's hands tremble as he picked up the broken glass from the floor. His mother-in-law stood above him, arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on her face. We were at their family's Christmas Eve dinner at the Riverside Country Club, and she just knocked an entire tray of appetizers onto the floor, then ordered my son Michael to clean it up, in front of everyone. Her daughter, Michael's wife Jennifer, just looked away. And when Michael hesitated for just a second, his mother-in-law said loud enough for the entire private dining room to hear, "On your knees, Michael. Someone from your background should be used to this kind of work." That's when I felt my jaw clench. I stood up slowly, excused myself, and walked to the restroom. Once inside, I pulled out my phone and made one call. They had no idea who they were dealing with. "My name is Robert Chen, and I'm 63 years old. For the past 15 years, I've worked in the cafeteria at County General Hospital. I serve food, wipe down tables, restock supplies. It's honest work. It's humble work. And to people like Victoria Ashford, my son's mother-in-law, it means I'm invisible." Michael met Jennifer 3 years ago at a charity fundraiser. He was there, representing the nonprofit, where he worked as a community outreach coordinator. She was there with her parents, the Ashfords. Victoria and her husband Preston owned Ashford Wellness, a chain of high-end medical spas and cosmetic surgery centers across the state. Michael told me Jennifer was different from her family, that she genuinely cared about helping people. I wanted to believe him. The wedding was 18 months ago. Small ceremony, mostly Jennifer's family and their country club friends. Victoria made it clear from the beginning that our family wasn't quite up to their standards. At the rehearsal dinner, she'd introduced me to her friends as Michael's father. He works at the hospital. Technically true. She just left out the cafeteria part, and when someone assumed I was a doctor, she didn't correct them. Michael noticed. I told him to let it go. "Pick your battles," I said. But the battles kept picking us. At Thanksgiving, Victoria suggested Michael and Jennifer skip our family dinner to spend it with Jennifer's side. Christmas was supposed to be different. Jennifer had insisted. She wanted both families together. So here we were, at the country club Victoria had selected, in a private dining room that probably cost more than my monthly salary. The evening started civil enough. Preston talked about golf. Victoria talked about their new location opening in Scottsdale. My late wife, Sarah's sister, my sister-in-law Marie, who'd helped raise Michael after Sarah passed, tried to make conversation. Victoria responded with polite nods and tight smiles, the kind that never reached the eyes. Then came the comment about Michael's car. He drove a 7-year-old Honda Civic, reliable, paid off, got him where he needed to go. Victoria mentioned, casually, that it was embarrassing to have it parked in their driveway when they had guests. "What must the neighbors think?" she'd said, laughing. Nobody else laughed. Jennifer touched Michael's hand under the table. He squeezed back but didn't respond. The appetizers arrived. Shrimp cocktail, stuffed mushrooms, some kind of phyllo pastry thing. The server, a young woman probably working her way through college, was balancing multiple trays. As she reached across to place one on our table, Victoria made an exaggerated gesture with her wine glass and knocked the tray from the server's hands. Glass shattered, food scattered across the expensive carpet. The server apologized profusely, her face red, hands shaking. Victoria waved her off dismissively. "Just get someone to clean this mess up," she said. Then she turned to Michael. "Actually, dear, why don't you help her? You should know how this works. Your father does it every day, doesn't he?" The room went silent. Michael's face drained of color. Jennifer said, "Mom, that's not—" "What?" Victoria interrupted. "I'm just saying, it's in his blood. Service work. Nothing wrong with that. Someone has to do it. Come on, Michael. Show us you're not too proud for a little manual labor." Preston chuckled. My sister-in-law Marie started to stand, but I put my hand on her arm. Michael looked at me. I could see the question in his eyes. "What do I do, Dad?" I gave him the smallest nod. "Do what you need to do to keep the peace for now. We'd talk later." So Michael knelt down and started picking up glass. The young server tried to help, mortified, but Victoria told her to go get a dustpan. As Michael worked, Victoria leaned back in her chair and said, "You see, Jennifer, this is what I've been talking about. You could have married Bradley Covington. His family has a real estate empire. Instead, you chose someone who—" She waved her hand vaguely at Michael on the floor. "Someone more humble." That's when I excused myself. In the restroom, I dialed a number I hadn't called in 2 years. It rang 3 times. "Robert?" The voice was surprised but warm. "It's been a while." "Hi, David. I need a favor." David Hoffman was an investigator with the State Medical Board. We'd met 15 years ago when he was recovering from surgery at County General, and we'd become friends over daily conversations in the cafeteria. He'd just gone through a divorce, needed someone to talk to. I was there. We stayed in touch. He owed me nothing, but he'd told me once, "If you ever need anything, call." "What's going on?" he asked. I told him about Victoria Ashford and Ashford Wellness. I told him about the evening. I told him about my son on his knees. There was a long pause. Then David said, "Ashford Wellness. Yeah, I know them. Robert, give me 24 hours. When I returned to the dining room, Michael had finished cleaning. He was back in his seat, jaw tight, not making eye contact with anyone. Victoria had moved on, talking about her holiday plans in Aspen. Jennifer looked miserable. I sat down, placed my napkin in my lap, and waited for dinner to arrive. The rest of the evening crawled by. Victoria made 3 more comments about working-class values and how Jennifer needed to adjust her expectations. Each one felt like a knife. Michael took it. Jennifer tried to deflect. Preston ignored it all, focused on his steak. As we were leaving, Victoria pulled me aside. "Robert," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "I hope you understand we only want what's best for Jennifer. I'm sure you want what's best for Michael, too. Sometimes that means knowing when to step back. Let him build a life separate from certain influences." I looked at her for a long moment. "I want Michael to be happy," I said, "and I want him to be treated with respect." "Of course," she said, smiling. "We all do." I drove home that night thinking about Sarah. My wife had been a teacher, 3rd grade. She'd passed away from cancer when Michael was 12. I'd been working maintenance at a factory back then. After Sarah died, I needed something different, something that felt more connected to helping people, even in a small way. That's when I took the hospital cafeteria job. It paid less, but it felt right. Sarah would have understood. I raised Michael on my own, with help from Marie and my small community. We didn't have much, but we had enough. Michael got scholarships, worked part-time jobs, put himself through college. He was proud of that. I was proud of him. And now I watched him being ground down by people who measured worth in car brands and zip codes. The next afternoon, David called me back. "Robert, we need to talk. Can you meet me?" We met at a diner near the hospital. David slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, inspection reports, complaint records. "Ashford Wellness has been cutting corners," David said quietly. "Big ones. We've had complaints about unsanitary conditions, unlicensed practitioners performing procedures, medications stored improperly. There was an incident 6 months ago. A woman got a serious infection from a procedure at their main location. It was settled quietly, but it should have triggered a full inspection. Somehow that didn't happen." "How did that not happen?" I asked. David's expression darkened. "Because Victoria Ashford sits on the Regional Health Advisory Board. She's got connections. She's been burying complaints, delaying inspections, greasing palms. But here's the thing, Robert. I've been compiling this for a while. Ever since that woman's case crossed my desk, I've been digging. I just needed a reason to push it forward, to make it official. And now you have one?" "Now I have motivation," he said. "What she did to your son, that's personal to you. The patients she's putting at risk, that's personal to me. I'm filing a formal complaint with the State Medical Board tomorrow. They'll have to launch a full investigation, all locations. And Robert, this won't be quiet. Once it starts, it's going to be very public." I sat back. How bad could this get for them? They could lose their licenses. All their locations could be shut down pending investigation. If criminal negligence is proven, Victoria and Preston could face charges. At minimum, their reputation is destroyed. And in their world, he gestured to the folder. Reputation is everything. I thought about Michael on his knees. I thought about the smirk on Victoria's face. I thought about every small cruelty, every dismissive comment, every moment she'd made my son feel small. Do it, I said. 3 days later, the news broke. State Medical Board launches investigation into Ashford Wellness Chain. The local news ran it. Then the regional papers picked it up. By day 4, it was on the morning shows. Former patients came forward. Employees spoke out about pressure to cut corners, to use expired products, to let unqualified staff perform procedures. Victoria's phone number was leaked somehow. Reporters camped outside their home, their country club, their business locations. The health department shut down 2 locations immediately for violations. Michael called me on day 5. "Dad, did you hear about Jennifer's parents?" "I saw it on the news," I said carefully. "It's bad, Dad. Really bad. Victoria's freaking out. They might lose everything. Jennifer's devastated." He paused. "She asked me if we knew anything. I don't know. She knows you work at County General. She wondered if you'd heard anything." "Michael," I said, "do you remember what I taught you when you were young? About standing up for yourself?" "Dad, what did you do?" "I made sure the right people knew about some wrong things," I said. "That's all. The rest is just consequences." There was a long silence. Then Michael said, very quietly, "She made me get on my knees, Dad. Like I was nothing. Like you were nothing. She's been doing that for 1.5 years, and I just took it because I love Jennifer, and I thought, maybe if I just proved myself enough." His voice cracked. "You don't have to prove anything to people like that," I said. "You're worth more than they'll ever understand." Another silence. Then, "Thank you, Dad." The investigation took 3 months. During that time, Jennifer moved in with us. She and Michael needed space from her parents, and their small apartment felt suffocating with all the media attention. Jennifer was quiet those first few weeks, processing the reality of who her parents were, what they'd done. One evening, she helped me make dinner. We were chopping vegetables, and she said, "I knew they were difficult. I knew they were snobs. But I didn't know they were criminals. All those people they hurt because they cared more about money than safety. You're not responsible for their choices," I told her. "I defended them to Michael," she said, "for months. Every time they said something cruel, I made excuses. I told him they just needed time, that they'd come around. I was so stupid." "You loved your parents," I said. "That's not stupid. That's human." She wiped her eyes. "Robert, I'm so sorry. For everything they said about you, about your work. You've been nothing but kind to me, and they treated you like you were beneath them. And you work at a hospital, helping people every day, and they run these vanity businesses that hurt people, and they thought they were better than you?" I put down my knife and looked at her. "Jennifer, what I do for work doesn't define my worth. What your parents do for work doesn't define theirs either. What defines worth is how you treat people, how you act when you have power. Your parents failed that test. You're not them." She hugged me then, and I thought about Sarah, who'd always wanted a daughter. The investigation concluded in March. Ashford Wellness was shut down permanently. 3 locations lost their licenses. Victoria was fined heavily and banned from serving on any health advisory boards. Preston faced civil suits from former patients. The financial damage was catastrophic. More importantly, the social damage was irreparable. Their country club quietly asked them to resign their membership. Friends stopped calling. The Scottsdale expansion was canceled. Victoria had built her entire identity on status, on being respected, on being someone who mattered in the right circles. All of that was gone. Preston tried to reach out to Michael once. He called, asking if Michael might talk some sense into the medical board, maybe vouch for their character. Michael declined. Preston didn't call again. Victoria never reached out at all. According to Jennifer, her mother blamed everyone but herself. blamed the medical board for being too strict, blamed former employees for being disloyal, blamed the media for sensationalizing, blamed Michael for not defending them. Never once did she apologize for making him kneel. In April, Jennifer and Michael renewed their vows. Small ceremony. Our family, a few close friends. No country club. We did it in the backyard of the small house they'd bought together. A house they could actually afford. A house Victoria had once called quaint with a sneer. During the ceremony, Michael said something that stuck with me. He said, "I'm grateful for the hard times, because they showed me who really loves me, who really stands beside me. I'm grateful for the people who tried to make me small, because they pushed me toward the people who remind me I'm enough." He was looking at me when he said it. Afterward, during the reception, David Hoffman pulled me aside. "You know," he said, "I've been doing this job for 22 years. I've seen a lot of people abuse power, hurt patients, game the system. But cases like this, where everything unravels, that's rare. Usually, people like the Ashfords get away with it." "What made this different?" I asked. "You did," he said. "You gave me the push I needed to act instead of just document. Sometimes all it takes is one person who cares enough to make that call." I thought about that, about the power of one call, one choice, one moment of deciding you're not going to let injustice slide by anymore. Later, as I was cleaning up paper plates and plastic cups, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Michael stood there with Jennifer. "Dad," Michael said, "we wanted to tell you something." Jennifer smiled, a real smile, the kind I hadn't seen from her in months. "We're pregnant," she said. I sat down hard on the nearest chair. "You're 3 months," Michael said, grinning. "We've been waiting to tell people until we were sure, but we wanted you to be the first to know." I looked at my son, at the happiness in his face, at the woman beside him who'd chosen to leave her parents' toxicity behind and build something real. I thought about the grandchild coming, about the family we were building, about Sarah and how much she would have loved this moment. "I'm going to be a grandfather," I said, the words catching in my throat. "The best grandfather," Jennifer said. "Our kid is going to know they come from a man who stands up for what's right, who treats people with dignity, who doesn't judge worth by job titles or bank accounts." Michael added, "They're going to know their grandfather by what really matters. That he showed up, that he protected his family, that he taught me what real strength looks like." I hugged them both, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself cry. That night, alone in my house, I pulled out an old photo album. Pictures of Sarah, of Michael growing up, of birthday parties and school plays and ordinary moments that meant everything. I found a picture from Michael's college graduation. He was in his cap and gown, arm around me, both of us grinning. Sarah had died 2 years before that day. We'd made it through, just the two of us. On the back of the photo, Sarah had written something before she got sick. I'd found it after she passed, tucked into the album. It said, "Robert, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Teach Michael that worth isn't about what you have or what you do. It's about who you are when nobody's watching. It's about standing up when it's hard. It's about protecting the people you love, not with money or status, but with courage and heart. You'll know what I mean when the time comes. I love you both." I ran my fingers over her handwriting. She'd known. Somehow, she'd known I'd face a moment like the one at that Christmas dinner. She'd known I'd have to choose between staying silent or standing up. And she'd left me this, her final lesson, her permission to be strong. The time had come, and I'd known what to do. 6 months later, on a Sunday afternoon, I was at Michael and Jennifer's house. The nursery was half finished. Michael was painting the walls a soft yellow while Jennifer organized tiny clothes. I was assembling a crib, reading instructions that seemed deliberately confusing. Jennifer brought me a glass of water. "Robert, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever regret it?" "What happened with my parents?" I set down the screwdriver and looked at her. "Do you?" She thought about it. "No," she said finally. "They needed to face consequences. People were hurt because of them. And what they did to Michael, to you. I can't regret them facing justice for that. But sometimes I miss having parents. Does that make sense?" It makes perfect sense, I said. You can grieve who you wish they were while accepting who they actually are. Those aren't contradictory. She nodded. They sent a letter last week, through their lawyer. They want to meet the baby when it's born. What do you want to do? I don't know, she said. Part of me wants to believe people can change. Part of me knows they won't. Michael says it's my decision. He'll support whatever I choose. I picked up the screwdriver again, lined up another piece of the crib. Here's what I think. Your child is going to need people around them who show up with love, who build them up, who teach them they're valuable just as they are. If your parents can do that genuinely, then maybe there's space for them. But if they're going to bring that same toxicity, that same judgment, that same cruelty, then your job is to protect your child from that. Even if it's hard, even if it hurts. You protected Michael, she said quietly. I tried to, I said. I didn't always get it right, but when it mattered most, I chose him over keeping the peace. I chose his dignity over avoiding conflict, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Jennifer hugged me then, and I realized that somewhere along the way, I'd gained a daughter. The baby, a girl they named Sarah Rose, was born in November. I held her in the hospital, this tiny perfect thing, and I felt my wife's presence so strongly it was like she was standing right beside me. Michael and Jennifer had chosen the name together. Sarah for my wife, Rose for Jennifer's grandmother, the one member of her family who'd always treated people with kindness. Victoria and Preston did reach out. They sent an expensive gift basket and a card that said they hoped to be part of their granddaughter's life. Jennifer responded with a letter. She told them they could meet Sarah, but only under certain conditions. They had to acknowledge what they'd done wrong, not just legally, but personally. They had to apologize to Michael and to me. And they had to understand that if they showed any of their old behaviors, any judgment or cruelty, they'd be removed from Sarah's life immediately. Preston responded. He asked to meet. Just him. He said Victoria wasn't ready, but he was. We met at a park, neutral ground. Preston looked older, tired. The weight of the past year showed in the lines on his face. Robert, he said, shaking my hand, thank you for agreeing to this. I'm here for Jennifer and Michael, I said. Not for you. He nodded. I understand. I want you to know, I'm not here to make excuses. What Victoria did at that dinner, what I allowed by not stopping it, what our business practices were, I can't take any of it back. I can't fix the harm we caused. No, I agreed. You can't. I spent 30 years building a business and a reputation, he said, and it turned out none of it was built on anything real. It was built on money and shortcuts and looking the other way. When it all came down, I had to face what we'd become. He paused. What I'd become. And what have you become? I asked. Unemployed, he said with a bitter laugh. Humbled, honest, maybe for the first time in decades. I got a job, Robert. I'm working at a hardware store. It's minimum wage, and I'm 61 years old. And some days my boss is younger than my daughter. And you know what? It's the most honest work I've done in 30 years. I studied him. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to know I understand now. What work means. What dignity means. You serve food in a hospital cafeteria, and you do it with more integrity than I ran an entire company. Michael works for a nonprofit helping people, and he has more worth than I ever recognized. I was wrong about everything, about what matters, about who deserves respect. You're telling the wrong person, I said. You need to tell Michael. I will, he said, if he'll listen. But I needed to tell you first. You're the one I disrespected the most. You're the one I dismissed as beneath me. And you're the one who taught me the biggest lesson of my life. I didn't set out to teach you anything, I said. I set out to protect my son. I know, Preston said. That's what makes it so powerful. You didn't do it for revenge. You did it for love. And the fallout, the consequences we faced, those weren't about vengeance. Those were about justice. I see that now. We sat in silence for a while, watching kids play on the playground equipment. Finally, I said, if you want to be in Sarah's life, you have to be someone worth knowing. Not someone with money or status, Just someone who shows up with kindness. Can you do that? I'm trying to learn how, he said. Then keep trying, I said. And maybe someday you'll get there. Preston did apologize to Michael. It took several conversations. Michael didn't forgive him immediately, didn't trust him right away. But slowly, carefully, they built something. Not a close relationship, but a civil one. Preston became a grandfather who sent birthday cards and showed up to occasional family dinners and treated everyone with respect. Victoria never came around. Jennifer tried a few times to reach out, but Victoria couldn't let go of her anger, her sense of being wronged. She couldn't take responsibility. Eventually, Jennifer stopped trying. It hurt, but she made peace with it. Sarah is 3 now. She calls me Poppy. Last week, I took her to the park, the same one where Preston and I had that first conversation. She wanted to play in the sandbox. As I watched her, this little person who carried my wife's name and my son's determination and Jennifer's kindness, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. A Christmas dinner where cruelty was served alongside expensive food. A phone call made in a restroom. An investigation that brought down an empire built on shortcuts and arrogance. A son who learned he didn't have to accept being made small. A daughter-in-law who chose truth over family loyalty. A grandchild who would grow up knowing that worth isn't measured in dollars or job titles. Sarah looked up from her sandcastle and called out, "Poppy, come see what I made." I walked over and knelt down beside her. The castle was lopsided, held together with hope and determination more than engineering. It was perfect. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," I said. "I made it for you," she said, beaming with pride. "For me?" "Uh-huh. Daddy says you're the strongest person he knows, so I made you a strong castle." I felt my throat tighten. "Did Daddy say why he thinks I'm strong?" She scrunched up her face, thinking hard. "He said you protected him when someone was mean, and that you taught him to stand up for what's right even when it's hard, and that real strength is being kind." I pulled her into a hug, this little girl who'd never met my Sarah but carried her name and her spirit. "Your daddy is very smart," I managed to say. "I know," she said matter-of-factly. "He gets it from you." Later, dropping Sarah back at home, Michael walked me to my car. "She told me about the castle," he said, smiling. "About what I told her. You're going to give me a big head," I said. "Dad," he said, serious now, "I never thanked you properly. For that night, for standing up when I couldn't, for teaching me that it's okay to demand respect, that I didn't have to accept being treated that way." "You don't have to thank me for protecting you," I said. "That's what fathers do." "Not all of them," he said quietly. Preston didn't. He sat there and watched Victoria destroy me piece by piece, and he did nothing. "You made one call and changed everything. You gave me my dignity back. You gave me the courage to demand better. You showed me what real strength looks like." I put my hand on his shoulder. "You always had that strength, Michael. You just needed permission to use it. And maybe a little backup." He laughed. "A little backup that brought down an entire medical spa empire." "Details," I said. Driving home, I thought about the journey. About that Christmas Eve dinner that felt like a lifetime ago. About the man I'd been then, angry but controlled, protective but strategic. About the choice to make that phone call, to set justice in motion, to refuse to let my son be diminished. I thought about Victoria, wherever she was now, hopefully learning lessons she should have known all along. I thought about Preston, stocking shelves at a hardware store, finally understanding what honest work meant. I thought about Jennifer, who'd chosen growth over loyalty to toxicity. I thought about Michael, who'd learned he deserved better. And I thought about Sarah, my wife, who'd left me instructions I didn't fully understand until I needed them. Stand up when it's hard. Protect with courage and heart. Teach worth by showing it, not by talking about it. I didn't destroy the Ashfords because I wanted revenge. I didn't take pleasure in watching their empire crumble. What I did for a simple reason. My son deserved to be treated with dignity, and someone needed to draw a line. Someone needed to say, this far and no further. Someone needed to show Michael that he didn't have to tolerate cruelty for the sake of keeping peace. The consequences that followed weren't my doing. They were Victoria and Preston's own creation. I just opened the door and let the truth walk through. People sometimes ask me if I regret it, if I wish I'd handled it differently, if I feel guilty about the fallout. I think about Michael's voice on the phone that night after the news broke, the relief and gratitude mixed with tears. I think about Jennifer choosing truth and integrity over her parents' money and status. I think about little Sarah, growing up in a home where respect and kindness aren't negotiable, where worth is inherent, where she'll never have to prove she deserves dignity. And I think about that moment at the Christmas dinner, seeing my son on his knees, picking up glass while his mother-in-law smiled with satisfaction. No, I don't regret it, not for a second. I fought for my son's right to be treated as a human being. I fought for justice for patients who'd been harmed by greed and negligence. I fought for the basic principle that cruelty shouldn't go unchallenged, that power abused should be power removed. I didn't fight for revenge. I didn't fight for satisfaction. I fought because someone had to, and I was in a position to do it. And in the end, that one phone call in a country club restroom, that one moment of choosing action over silence, it changed everything. It gave my son his dignity back. It brought a family closer. It protected future patients. It taught a 3-year-old girl that her poppy is strong. That's worth more than any empire, any country club membership, any expensive dinner could ever be worth. That's worth everything.